All right, so have you ever thought about maybe studying abroad? You know,
Yep.
what if you could learn in a country known for its tulips and windmills, but also like cutting edge education?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
that could be you in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
except
Wow,
for
it is.
sure changing.
They are.
So if you're an international student or thinking of becoming one, we're going to take a deep dive into what's happening in Dutch higher education and how it might affect your plans.
Yeah.
And we've got some really interesting stuff to look at.
Oh, we
We've
do.
got policy documents,
Yes.
we've got expert analysis,
Uh-huh.
and even a sneak peek at how this is all playing out for students like right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, really. I mean, the Netherlands is already like this melting pot of cultures on campus. Did you know over 25% of their students are from overseas?
Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
Now they're aiming to reduce that number, and it all kind of revolves around the Dutch language.
Whoa, okay, that's a big shift.
It is.
So what's the driving force behind this change? Like what's the government's perspective?
Well, imagine like being a Dutch student and struggling to find courses in your native language.
Uh-huh.
That's a big part of it. The government wants to ensure their own citizens have like easy access to education. But it's not just about language access either. They're also kind of concerned about the financial strain that, a large influx of international students can put on the system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Resources are limited and they need to make sure things are sustainable. But I'm also curious about the long-term vision here. It sounds like they're thinking beyond just the classroom.
Right, exactly. The government wants to see more integration, more international students putting down roots and like becoming part of Dutch society and the workforce.
So it's not just about getting a degree and leaving.
Right.
It's about becoming part of the fabric of the Netherlands.
Exactly.
Okay, so how are they planning to achieve this? Like, what specific changes are they making?
Well, one of the biggest changes is like a significant reduction in English taught bachelor's programs. Right now, about 30% of these programs are in English, but the aim is to shift that to two-thirds being primarily in Dutch, with English only making up about a third of the curriculum.
Wow, that's a pretty dramatic shift. So what does this mean for international students who might not be fluent in Dutch? What are the potential downsides here?
Well, for starters, fewer English taught programs means the competition for those spots will be fierce.
Right.
And even if you do get in, imagine graduating and trying to find work when only about 25% of international grads stick around for 5 years after they finish their studies.
That's a pretty low number. I wonder if this language push will make it even harder for graduates to find jobs and stay in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Language barriers can be a major hurdle, not just for finding work, but also for truly integrating into society.
Okay, so things are looking a bit challenging for, aspiring international students.
Yeah.
But before we get too doom and gloom, didn't you mention there were some exceptions to these new rules?
Yes, and these exceptions are quite telling. They give us some clues about the Netherlands' future priorities. For instance, there are exceptions for programs in border regions or areas with shrinking populations where attracting students, regardless of language, is vital.
So they're being pragmatic about where they need to attract talent. What other exceptions are there?
Think about fields with labor shortages. If they desperately need engineers or scientists, they're more likely to offer programs in English to attract international students with those skills.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, if you've got the skills we need, come on in, we'll make it work.
Precisely. There are also exceptions for programs that are unique, maybe offered by only one institution in the whole country, or ones that are inherently international in focus.
Okay, that last one has me intrigued. What exactly do you mean by inherently international programs? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so think about fields like international relations or European studies or specialized business programs with a global outlook. These exceptions suggest that the Netherlands still values international collaboration and expertise in key areas.
So it's not like they're shutting the door on the world. They're just being more selective about who they welcome and where they need those international skills.
Exactly. And this selectivity also ties back into their goal of encouraging deeper integration. They want to create a system where international students are more likely to connect with Dutch culture, not just exist in like a separate English-speaking bubble.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about fostering genuine connections, not just transactional education. Now, let's bring in the voice of someone on the front lines, dealing with these changes every day. We recently spoke with an expert from ApplyCourses who's helping students navigate this new landscape, and they had one really crucial piece of advice. Learn Dutch and learn it fast.
I couldn't agree more. Learning the language isn't just about meeting academic requirements. It's the key to unlocking a deeper cultural experience and broadening your career options.
It's like they're saying, don't just dip your toes in, dive headfirst into Dutch culture. They also emphasize the importance of thoroughly researching program language requirements and exceptions. What are your thoughts on that advice, and what research tips would you give to our listener?
Research is absolutely essential. Don't just rely on general overviews. Dive into program websites, contact university admissions offices directly, and even connect with current students if you can. Look for detailed course descriptions, the language of instruction for each one, and any support services offered for language learners.
So it's like being a detective for your future education. You got to dig deep and find those hidden clues. But I imagine this research goes beyond just ticking boxes. What are some of the less obvious things our listeners should be looking for?
You're right, it's about more than just the facts and figures. Think about the overall learning environment. Is it truly international, or is it primarily geared towards Dutch students? Are there opportunities for cultural exchange and language practice outside the classroom?
So it's about understanding the vibe, the feeling of the place, and whether it aligns with your desire to really immerse yourself in Dutch culture.
Exactly. It's about making sure the program is the right fit for your goals and your willingness to embrace the challenge of learning a new language and adapting to a new way of life.
This is all such valuable information, and it really paints a picture of how the Netherlands is trying to find that sweet spot between welcoming international students and preserving its own cultural and linguistic identity.
It's a fascinating balancing act, and the choices made by individual students will play a huge role in shaping the future of Dutch higher education.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground, but there's so much more to explore. In our next segment, we'll delve even deeper into the potential impact of these changes.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Netherlands' evolving education landscape. We just discussed the importance of thorough research for prospective students and how crucial it is to understand the overall learning environment.
And I think that leads perfectly into the economic factors at play here, because money matters, right? Higher education is a big investment for both the student and the country hosting them.
Absolutely.
So how does this new policy, with its focus on reducing international student numbers, impact the Netherlands economy?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's definitely complex.
Yeah.
On one hand, limiting international students could mean a loss of revenue for universities.
Right.
Those students often pay higher tuition fees, and they contribute to the local economy through their spending on housing, food, and daily life.
So fewer students, less money flowing into the system. I can see why some people might be worried about that.
But here's the other side of the coin. The Dutch government argues that by encouraging more Dutch students to pursue higher education and join the workforce, they're strengthening the country's long-term economic prospects.
Okay.
A highly educated domestic workforce can be a powerful engine for innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic growth.
So it's a trade-off. Short-term revenue from international students versus a long-term investment in the Dutch workforce. It's like they're playing the long game.
Exactly. And remember, this policy isn't about completely shutting out international students. It's about finding a more sustainable balance that benefits both Dutch society and the students who choose to study there.
So zooming out a bit, the Netherlands isn't the only country grappling with these issues, right? It seems like a lot of popular study destinations are facing similar challenges.
You're absolutely right. We're seeing similar trends in the UK, Canada, and even the US. Countries want to attract talent from around the world, but they also want to preserve their own languages, cultures, and economic interests. It's a bit of a global tug of war.
It's like they're trying to figure out how to welcome the world while also staying true to themselves. How do you find that balance?
That's the million-dollar question, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Each country has its own unique history, demographics, and economic realities to consider.
Speaking of unique realities, the Netherlands has always had this reputation for being open-minded and internationally focused. How do these changes affect their image as a hub for innovation and global collaboration?
It's a valid concern, and one that Dutch universities are actively addressing. Many emphasize that while they're committed to increasing Dutch language use, they're also investing in support services for international students, things like language courses and cultural integration programs.
So it's not just about limiting English, it's also about providing the resources to help international students thrive in a Dutch-speaking environment. It's like they're building a bridge, not a wall.
That's a great way to put it. The goal is to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for all students, regardless of their background.
And how are international students themselves reacting to these changes. I imagine there are mixed feelings.
Definitely. Understandably, there's concern about the increased competition for English taught programs and the challenges of learning Dutch.
Right.
But others see it as an opportunity for a deeper cultural immersion, for building a more meaningful connection with the Netherlands. It really depends on their individual goals and motivations.
It's a reminder that change, even with good intentions, can be disruptive and require adaptation. It's a journey.
Absolutely. And it's important to acknowledge the diverse perspectives of those affected by these policy shifts.
So we've explored the economic side, the global context, and even touched on the human impact. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to address: the long-term implications for the Netherlands' position in the global higher education landscape. Will these changes enhance or diminish their standing? What do you think?
Well, that's a question only time will truly answer.
Hmm.
But we can certainly analyze some potential scenarios. Let's play a little what-if game.
Okay, I love a good what-if game. So, what if these changes lead to a decline in the number of international students choosing the Netherlands? What could be the fallout?
That's certainly a possibility. If the perception is that the Netherlands is becoming less welcoming to international students, it could lose ground to other countries actively recruiting them. This could have a ripple effect impacting university rankings, research collaborations, and the diversity of thought on campuses.
So, a potential loss of prestige and global influence. But let's flip the script. What if, and this is a big what if, these changes actually strengthen the Netherlands' position?
That's the optimistic scenario. The government is betting that by prioritizing Dutch language acquisition and deeper integration, they'll attract a different type of international student,
Okay.
one who's more committed to engaging with Dutch society and potentially staying in the country long term.
So instead of just being a place to get a degree, the Netherlands could become a place where international students build a life, contribute to the country's future, and maybe even call it home.
Exactly. And that could be a win-win for both Dutch society and the international students who choose to make the Netherlands their home. Imagine the richness and vibrancy that could bring.
Yeah, it's amazing to think how these policy changes could reshape Dutch society. It's like they're setting the stage for a whole new chapter.
And we have to remember, this is just one piece of a much larger, ever-changing puzzle.
Right. The global higher education landscape is constantly evolving, influenced by economics, technology, and demographics. The Netherlands is just one example of how countries are trying to adapt to these complex forces.
And as we've seen, informed decision-making is key. We encourage you to keep exploring this topic, researching your options, and staying curious about the world of education.
Exactly. It's a dynamic landscape, and the more you know, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it. Now, in our final segment, we'll tie everything together, summarizing the key takeaways and leaving you with some food for thought. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been unpacking the Netherlands' evolving approach to higher education, and it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. We've explored those policy shifts, economic factors, the global context, and even those personal experiences of students who are kind of caught in the middle of this transition.
Yeah, so let's try to distill all of this down to like the essentials.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways from our deep dive? What do we really want our listeners to kind of grasp?
Well, I think if there's one big headline, it's that the landscape of studying in the Netherlands is changing, especially if you are an international student who's looking at a bachelor's degree. Fluency in Dutch is no longer just a nice to have. It's becoming, essential.
Yeah, it's like the Netherlands is saying, we appreciate you coming here, but we want you to be a part of our society, not just passing through.
Exactly. And this shift kind of echoes this broader trend we're seeing worldwide.
Yeah.
Countries are trying to find that balance between attracting global talent and preserving their unique national identities.
It's a delicate dance, for sure. The Netherlands is trying to carve its own path, but what does this mean for someone who's considering studying there? What are the real-world implications?
Well, I think there are challenges and opportunities. On the one hand, there's increased competition for those coveted English taught programs. And learning Dutch, well, that takes time and effort.
Right.
But on the other hand, imagine the rewards of truly immersing yourself in Dutch culture, not just, skimming the surface.
Think about the friendships you could forge, the deeper understanding of a different way of life, the sense of accomplishment from mastering a new language.
Precisely. Those are the kinds of experiences that stay with you long after graduation. It's about personal growth, cultural enrichment, broadening your horizons in ways a textbook just never could.
Yeah, But let's be real, it also demands a deeper level of commitment and maybe a longer-term perspective on your time in the Netherlands.
You've hit the nail on the head, and that's why we just can't stress enough the importance of thorough research. If you're serious about studying in the Netherlands, don't just glance at brochures. Dive into those program websites, contact university advisors directly, talk to current students if you can get the chance.
It's like you're becoming an investigator for your future education. Leave no stone unturned.
Exactly.
But what are some of the, less obvious things our listeners should be looking for as they're doing their research?
Well, don't just focus on the language of instruction. Think about the overall learning environment.
Okay.
Does the university have a vibrant international community? Are there opportunities to practice your Dutch and connect with local students outside of class? Look for clues about the university's commitment to supporting international students' integration.
So it's about finding the right fit, a place where you feel welcomed and supported as you embark on this language and cultural immersion journey.
Right. It's about aligning your personal goals with the opportunities and the challenges that come with studying in a country that's actively encouraging you to become a part of its fabric.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave our listeners with a final kind of thought-provoking question to ponder.
Given all these changes, do you think studying in the Netherlands now requires a deeper commitment to embracing Dutch culture than before?
That's a powerful question. It's not just about learning some Dutch phrases. It's about truly immersing yourself in the way of life, the customs, the values.
And that kind of immersion can be incredibly enriching. It can lead to unexpected friendships, a deeper understanding of yourself, and maybe even a lifelong connection to a place that might feel far away right now.
So as you consider your own educational journey, we really encourage you to kind of reflect on that question.
Yeah.
What kind of cultural experience are you seeking? Are you willing to go beyond the tourist perspective and dive deep into something truly unique?
The Netherlands is offering a path, but it's up to each individual to decide if it's the right one for them.
And that's the beauty of choice, right?
Yeah.
We hope this deep dive has empowered you with the information and inspiration to make informed choices about your future.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.